Minister, the main reason for you being invited in here today was to talk to us about the recent resignations, and obviously Tom Keane and Laura McGahey have huge reputations for reform and change management, and they were very good choices at the time. So I'd like to ask you, Minister, what is your understanding of the reasons why both of those two senior people resigned?
Thank you, Deputy. Well, I would agree with what the Secretary-General has just said. I think his analysis feels right to me.
Sorry, Minister, with all due respect, I'm asking you, what's your understanding of the reasons why those two people resigned?
No, I understand that, Deputy, and,
yeah,
and
the
Secretary-General has just given a detailed one. I would agree with that.
No. Sorry, I'm asking you, why do you think those two people resigned?
No, I understand that, Deputy. So
can you tell us that?
I can repeat what Robert said if you like, but I'd
prefer if you didn't. I'd prefer if you would answer the question, Minister.
Okay, but I'm answering the questions.
Well, why do you think they resigned?
I have the same view. I think ultimately, as Robert has said, Laura was frustrated. I think probably the structure of the Sláintecare team needed to be changed. And that's exactly what we're doing. In terms of why Professor Keane resigned, he referenced a resistance to change. And in his letter, as you'll be aware, to the council that he chaired, he felt that the environment was such that change was impossible. And
what's your understanding of what he meant by that?
Well, to be honest, Deputy, I am somewhat puzzled by that, because what I see right across the system is change.
Sorry, are you saying then you don't understand why those two people resigned?
No, I've just told you why I think Laura may have resigned. And when it comes to Professor Keane...
Sorry, do you think she was looking for a structure like what you're proposing now?
Well, really, that's a question for Laura, Deputy. You asked me why I think she probably resigned.
I'm asking you what your understanding of the situation is.
Yeah, and I've given you my understanding of the situation.
Okay, it seems to indicate that you don't have an understanding of why they resigned.
Well, you can say that if you want, Deputy. You asked me what my understanding was. I've told you what my understanding is.
Okay, so in relation to Tom Keane, who's been, through this before with the cancer programme, he's highly respected, and he said he wasn't going to hang around if there wasn't political support for Sláintecare. So what is your understanding then of why he actually decided to resign?
As I said, Deputy, the reasons that he gave me and the reasons that he wrote to me referenced an environment in which change was impossible and a resistance to change. So
and do you think that was a justified assessment of the department and the HSE, the health system?
I think when you look at the report that I got from the Executive Director about a week or two previous to this.
Do you think that was justified, that view of the resistance to change? That was the view expressed by Professor Keane. Do you think that was justified?
I think when you look at the report that I got from the Executive Director...
I'm just asking you, do you think it was justified, yes or no?
I think, Deputy, with respect, you ask whatever questions you want, but you have to allow me to answer the question.
Okay, I don't want you repeating what you've said already. Do you think it was justified or not?
Deputy, I'll answer the question if you'll allow me to answer the question.
Yeah, but I'm under pressure of time, so...
Okay, so can I answer...
Yes or no?
Can I answer the question?
Go on.
Thank you. In answer to, is change possible? We have to look at the evidence.
No, I didn't ask you that question. Okay, I'd like to move on then. Look, the big recommendation of the Committee on the Future of Healthcare was that the Sláintecare office would not be located within the Department of Health. And lessons were learned in relation to the cancer strategy. Because the big fear was that there would be departmental capture of the Sláintecare plan. And I think it's true to say that if the Department of Health and the HSE were capable of reform, we would have seen it long ago. But the concern was that, as I say, it would be captured. And, hearing what you're proposing now as a replacement structure, you can't help coming to the conclusion that this is a hostile takeover of Sláintecare. So, Minister, I want to ask you to be a bit more precise in what exactly you're proposing. So can you outline the new governance structure for the implementation of Sláintecare now, as you referenced in your speech? Who is going to be in charge of the implementation of Sláintecare, and where will the independent oversight come from?
Thank you, Deputy. And can I just pick up on one comment you made, and I appreciate we're tight for time.
No, I'd prefer if you just answer the questions, please.
When you say...
3 questions there. Can you just answer those, Minister?
Fine. As we laid out in the opening, Deputy, the Secretary-General and the Chief Executive of the HSE are going to co-chair a board. They will have their senior teams on that. The accountability and responsibility for the major projects will be shared across the department. And as we were discussing earlier on, that hadn't happened previously.
So what's that exact structure then for implementing Sláintecare?
I'm sorry, Deputy.
Sláintecare is a reform programme, okay? Yeah. So it appears to me that in terms of the organisations that need to be reformed, the HSE and the Department of Health, to facilitate Sláintecare, you're putting in the 2 senior people from those 2 organisations and embedding it in the department. I mean, what is that about? It sounds like it's, you know, a continuation of this concern about the attempt to suffocate Sláintecare.
Deputy,
so where is the open governance of that, and where's the oversight?
I'm not sure what you mean by open governance and oversight.
Who is going to be driving reform?
Me, the Secretary-General and the Chief Executive of the HSE.
Okay, but we haven't had reform from either of those 2 officials.
But you see, you keep saying this, Deputy, and I have to push back. You keep saying the Department of the HSE are incapable of reform. There has been no reform.
No, I didn't.
No, you did. And
what
Deputy,
I'm saying
I'll finish on this.
You need somebody driving that reform programme for it to happen. There were 2 senior people there. And they have been working on this for the last couple of years, and they've come to the conclusion that there's serious resistance within the Department of Health and within the HSE to the kind of reforms, and particularly the kind of accountability that was envisaged by Sláintecare.
And yet, over 97% of the Sláintecare projects
I'm talking
are
about,
on track, Deputy.
Yeah, I'm talking about the key things, about the devolution of power. The devolution of power and the introduction of legal accountability for clinical outcomes. That's what I'm talking about. And in the Sláintecare programme, there was a requirement established for 6 pieces of legislation. One of those has been introduced, which was reinstating the HSE board, which was crazy to happen in the first place. 2 of the others concern legislation. Legislation for accountability for you as minister, or whoever the minister is, all staff, but particularly legislation for senior management in terms of the spending of budgets, but also critically for clinical outcomes. Now, I've looked at the legislative programme. There is no indication that there is any work being done on those pieces of legislation, which are regarded and were regarded by the All-Party Committee as essential to achieve the kind of reform, which is the devolution of power and the introduction of legal accountability for people within the health service. Now, what's your reason for there being no progress being made in that regard?
Well, Deputy, I can't speak for before I came into office, but I can tell you...
You've been there now.
But I can tell you that in the year and a half we've been in office, as the Secretary-General has said, the vast majority of our time, attention, focus and resource has been on the pandemic. We're coming out of that period, hopefully now, and now what you're seeing is a reorganisation in terms of the most senior leadership team for universal healthcare, a waiting list plan, the elective hospitals progressing.
But no progress made on legislation for accountability. So, Minister, I want to ask you, I don't think I've heard you use the term accountability at all in respect of what is required in terms of reform. So I'm asking you, do you accept the view and the very strong view expressed by the all-party committee? And it was probably the #1 priority that, you know, was shared by everybody on that committee, that the absolute priority had to be to restructure the HSE and to introduce accountability for services and for budgets and clinical outcomes at local level. What is your view on that priority which was set by the committee?
My view is that the absolute priority is getting people access to high quality care. That is
no,
the
I asked you about
priority.
accountability.
You know, I'm
Minister,
answering the question.
sorry, I asked you your view on the importance of accountability as set out in the structures proposed by the Sláintecare plan.
Thank you, Deputy. And I'm trying to answer that question. I'm making the point that the absolute priority is that people get access to care and...
Yeah, you've said that. You've said that.
And as part of that, there has to be accountability. One of the huge gaps that I have seen in the system, and it's a conversation that we're having with the HSE, is a lack of data, right? We can have all the legal structures and legislation.
Yeah, but that's what regionalisation is about.
But without the data, we can't hold anyone to account. So one of the things... That's
exactly part of the regionalisation plan.
Yeah, so one of the...
Integration, you get budgets on the basis of population profile, and you get accountability for clinical outcomes.
And the first step, Deputy, and I think we would agree on this, I would hope, is that we have to have the information, because without the information, we can't hold anybody to account. So one of the things we're doing right now is we're pushing ahead on putting systems in place to be able to gather and track that information.
What you have outlined in your speech in relation to giving responsibility to the department and the HSE for their own reform, embedding Sláintecare in the department, I think you're absolutely going against the intention of Sláintecare and the democratic decision of the Dáil in terms of progressing this proposal, prioritising the issue of regionalisation and accountability. Okay. And I think you're going directly against the expressed wishes of the Dáil in that respect.
Okay.